just watching is Florida v. Frank Bybee. You're watching actually the victim on the stand, who's a 79-year-old woman. It was very tough to see, but she was testifying about what she heard and saw in this very strange and bizarre and disturbing case. I'm going to give you a little bit of background on it and tell you a little bit what we know and what you're going to see. They're taking a 15-minute break. So again, this is the case of Frank Bybee. Bybee is a former Sarasota County Sheriff's deputy who's been charged with, get this, 18 felonies, including attempted murder, exploitation of the elderly, burglary, theft, and kidnapping. He faces a life sentence if he is convicted of the first-degree felony charge of attempted murder, and it's attempted murder of the victim you just saw there, a 79-year-old woman. Bybee was a patrol deputy who was sent to a call. The 79-year-old woman made a call to the sheriff's office on October 21st. He responded to the call, took the woman to Sarasota Memorial Hospital, where the former deputy prayed with her before he left. About 2 months later, the woman reported that Bybee had inserted himself into her personal life and become too controlling. She asked the sheriff's office for help in ending this relationship. He was placed on administrative leave, and 3 days later after that happened, he went back to the elderly woman's house and attempted to kill her. Well, now after the sheriff's office terminated his employment, after enough investigation was done and information was found, they did an internal affairs investigation. They found allegations of that it was conduct unbecoming and conforming with the laws, and on top of criminal charges that are now brought. So now he's on trial for those 18 felonies. Bizarre case, bizarre case. But to help me talk a little bit about this and understand what exactly is happening in this case, as well as the Morris Brothers case, we have LawNewz' senior editor, Ronn Blitzer. Ron, great to see you. Thanks for coming on.
Great to be here, Jesse.
What's going on? What's happening here?
This is one of the wilder cases that I've covered. We're hearing testimony from the victim right now. To be honest, I didn't get to catch her testimony up until now, but just reading the allegations, I was reading the police paperwork in this case, and the allegations are frankly staggering. You have, as you mentioned, Bybee was a sheriff's deputy in Florida, and he originally responded to this woman's call, and then, through staying with her in the hospital, he managed to develop a sort of familial relationship with her that he allegedly then used to get more involved in her personal affairs. He's accused of getting into her bank accounts, stealing checks from her while she was being cared for her medical conditions, and depositing allegedly tens of thousands of dollars from her account into his. He's accused of kidnapping her dog.
Oh my gosh.
And he admitted to officers that he then sold it on Craigslist and wouldn't tell the woman where the dog was. He allegedly then, after she complained to the sheriff's office about this conduct, he allegedly went to her apartment and tried to kill her, first forcibly, and by trying to force medication down her throat, and then she ended up passing out, and when she woke up, she claimed that there was carbon monoxide flooding her apartment because her car was running with the door to her house open. So this is really, really bizarre stuff.
Let's unpack a little bit.
Yeah, there's a lot going on there.
If this is all true, this is horrifying.
Yeah.
Horrifying. But here's the problem, and what we just heard on the stand was the victim on the stand. Now, she's 79 years old. She's infirm. She is being pressed on what do you remember, what don't you remember. If this is all true, what you just said, wouldn't a serious injustice come about where a jury might listen to this and say, I don't know what to believe from her. She might be confused. She might not remember everything, because as some of the questions that were being asked, you have memory gaps about that night in question where she was being attacked. No, I don't think so. But the jury's going to have to make a decision on their own. So the worst thing that would happen is, if this is all true, but you have someone who a jury is looking at that she might not remember everything she's supposed to, couldn't this guy get off?
It's certainly possible, and that is the unfortunate position that that jurors are in cases like this, and it's a tough position for a defense attorney, because that is absolutely a valid line of defense for a defense attorney to take, to try and impeach this woman's credibility as a witness, in this case, to say, oh, well, she's old, she is not well, she didn't remember things, she's gotten it wrong. But at the same time, while Bybee's attorney is going to want to create reasonable doubt here, you don't want to go too far, because there's a line between pointing out that her memory may be fallible and badgering her and kind of bullying her, and then you end up risking getting more sympathy for her from the jury.
Right. Well, now would be the time for the prosecution to really back up everything she states with, for example, if there was bank transactions, isn't there security cameras? Are there eyewitnesses that saw Frank Bybee coming to her house? I mean, this is a case where you really have to back up this story with both physical evidence and witness testimony, am I correct?
Oh, absolutely. But what also helps the prosecution is that Bybee, according to police paperwork anyway, isn't even denying some of these allegations. He's claimed, he told police that he did take money from the woman's account, but it was in order to care for the dog. So, his defense isn't necessarily that he didn't do any of this.
He's explaining
It's just
it all
explaining that he was actually taking care of her and handling her affairs. So, if she, that could help the prosecution, because then it's tougher to claim that she doesn't remember when he's saying that, no, this happened, it just happened for other reasons.
But he's not related to her.
No.
He has no relationship with her.
No, they didn't know each other at all before any of this started, before she made her initial call.
So the idea that he's just going to come along like a good hero and take care of her makes no sense. Am I correct? I mean, what would he have to prove? What would the defense have to put on to say, why would he find something in his heart to take care of this random stranger?
Well, he's a sheriff's deputy. This is someone who's a public servant, has been for years. He responded to her call where she was in need of help. Maybe he felt something for her. Maybe looked to her as like a motherly figure, a grandmotherly figure, and decided out of the goodness of his heart to help her out.
Yeah.
And maybe his defense could be he was really just trying to do what he felt was best for her. She misunderstood what was going on. But again, as you mentioned, the allegations are really troubling, and if they're true, it's going to be a tough hole for him to dig himself out of.
Well, I hope they're not true. I really don't. But I tell you, the problem is you see stories like this where people manipulate elderly people a lot of times for money. They try to get into more wealthy individuals' bank accounts and befriending them, and I hate to say this, even making advances and having some sort of relationship with them is a way to do that. And you see that happening more and more. So it's, as bizarre as this case is, it's not outside the realm of possibility.
Right, and it's an image that a jury can believe. It's something that the prosecution can easily piece together. And you say, like, what kind of person would do something like this? And that's exactly what the defense is probably going to push also, saying, this is a deputy, he's a public servant, he's not the kind of person who would do something like this. But the prosecution's going to put together their case to show that's exactly what did happen, unfortunately.
What's scary is we sometimes cover cases here on LawNewz where people are in an authoritative position. They're officers. We saw the Coast Guard member, Adrian Loya. This case, people are people, and they can even be in that position, but they might manipulate individuals or the law to their benefit. So again, I hope none of this is true, because it's very disturbing details, and we are going to be back in about 10 minutes or so, maybe 5-10 minutes before we have continuing coverage of there. And we'll have to see what happens. I have to say, though, the sheriff's office did terminate his employment. They saw enough cause to do that. They found that there was enough allegations of conduct unbecoming, that he wasn't conforming to law on top of the criminal charges. So there's something there.
There's something there, and the internal investigation could have turned up plenty of evidence that will come out at trial to show that, yes, he is indeed guilty of this. Or it could be something different. It could just be that he was, whatever he was doing, even if it was benevolent in terms of caring for this woman and getting involved in her life, if it was while he was on duty, that could have been grounds for termination. So it certainly could be that they found that he did these horrible things, or it could just be that whatever he was doing for whatever reason, it was when he should have been working.
Well, we are going to wait to see what happens in this case, and Ron, a lot to analyze with that. But while we do have some time before we go back to our live coverage, I do want to talk to Ron about Morris twins. Again, this is the trial of Boston Celtics forward Marcus Morris and his brother Washington Wizards forward Markieff Morris, who've both been charged with 2 counts of aggravated assault. The brothers are accused of beating up Eric Hood outside of a Phoenix gym in January 2015. They face jail time. They face possible game suspension. Ron, what we saw yesterday is the defense started to present its case. The prosecution had finished presenting their evidence on Tuesday. The Morris lawyers rested their case now. So now we're going to be seeing, I think, closing arguments today, if I'm correct. But what we saw yesterday was Gerald Bowman, who's the other defendant. Okay, so there was 5 guys that said to have been in this attack. Some have pled guilty. Morris twins pled not guilty. Gerald Bowman's pled not guilty. He said, I wasn't anywhere near any of that interaction. I was out getting a haircut. I went out for the night. I wasn't with the Morris twins. I can't say what they did or not. What did you think about his testimony? So
it was very interesting to hear, that, this alibi that he wasn't there at all. And it's interesting how that fits in with the rest of this case, because you have some doubt for both sides of this case. When it comes to the Morris twins and their involvement, you have some witnesses who say that they didn't see them there or they saw one of them there. You have witnesses saying that that Eric Hood's side offered to pay them in order to testify and implicate the Morris twins.
We keep hearing that, Ron, that looking for payment from the Morris twins. It's starting to add up, no?
It is, and it really, when this trial started, and you had the defense theory that Eric Hood was a guy who was just trying to cash in on the Morris twins' fame and fortune, and made up these allegations. To me personally, it seemed like kind of a stretch, but especially when they tried to start by saying, oh, well, this is what this guy does for a living. He tries to associate himself with young athletes to try to mooch off of them. And I thought, all right.
You should say that as the picture comes up of him with the defendants.
Yeah, while they were in college.
Yeah.
So, yeah, it was an interesting story, but without the evidence behind it, I wasn't really buying it. But then the more that comes out, the more it starts to make sense. If his side is trying to bribe witnesses into supporting him, thinking, oh, well, he's going to come into money and he'll be able to pay these people off, that's certainly interesting. But then on the other side, we heard from the lead detective, I believe it was Detective Santos, who said that when he first started talking to the Morris twins, they denied even knowing Eric Hood, and we know that that's false. Mm-hmm. So that could be a question of, when they're lying about even knowing the guy, maybe that could be them trying to just be removed from the situation altogether, even if they had nothing to do with it, or they're trying to hide something. So, we'll see.
Couldn't it also be that, I think Aaron Keller made this point the other day, maybe this is like somebody that, oh, I know that guy, like, I know Eric Hood, he wanders around, he comes to meet us sometimes, but I don't really know him. I don't really have a relationship with him. You see him taking pictures with him, but it could just be, it's a guy I know, not really know. So maybe jurors have to meet in the middle a little bit, take what they're saying, not as black and white, but a little bit as gray. And I think the problem, though, for the prosecution is, I'm not buying why this would happen, and I'll tell you why. Number one, the Morris twins say that they were nowhere near this. They say they were 100 yards away in a parking lot. The idea that he was being beat up by 5 guys, if you're being beat up by so many guys, you might be a little bit discombobulated about what you see and hear. And the alleged motive that Eric Hood sent an inappropriate text to their mother when they didn't really allegedly know them, how would they know the mother, doesn't add up to me.
Yeah, a lot of it doesn't add up. You know, the truth, I'm sure, is somewhere in the middle, as it usually is. But yeah, like you said, if there were multiple people said to be involved in this attack, and and again, he was initially attacked from behind, it could have been other people involved. He may not have known what was going on, or even if, because there are so many ways that you can go with this story. Did they know each other well? What about this text supposedly between Eric Hood and the Morris's mother? If they did have that animosity stemming back, and then Hood gets attacked, he could think, oh, well, I'm just going to pin it on these two guys because they're rich and they don't like me.
Yeah, it just doesn't make sense. And correct me if I'm wrong, have we found the text message yet?
I don't believe so, and
Right.
I think there was some controversy over, whether or not investigators tried to find it at all.
Yeah.
So, that's a big part of this story, and it's a big question.
Before we might be going back to Bybee in a minute with live coverage. I'm curious if we do see closing arguments today. Ron, what do you expect from both sides?
I expect a lot more of the same of what we've been seeing. I think we're going to see from the prosecution trying to show that the Morris twins were liars when they said that they didn't know Eric Hood, when clearly they did, and they're just trying to get away with this, and that they orchestrated this whole thing and got other people involved. And the defense is going to say, no, this isn't true at all. Hood is just trying to frame these guys, and he's trying to do what he's always done, allegedly, and just try to make a quick buck. So that's what both sides, I expect, are going to hit the hardest in their closings, and we'll see that later today.
And let's not forget, it's not just jail time they face.
4 suspension.
Years, it's suspension. We had on a sports law expert earlier in the week who said if they get convicted, she guesses 50-game suspension. These are professional basketball players. They have careers, they have money coming in, they have endorsements. This is going to really hurt them. This is going to hurt their wallets, this is going to hurt their brand, this is going to hurt their image, it's going to hurt the teams.
Yeah, and that's what's interesting, because you have the closing arguments coming up later today, and not only are the jurors going to be paying attention to determine the fate of these players, but you better believe league executives are going to be watching also, because if there's a conviction, then for sure they're going to be hit with suspensions, but it's a question of how big would the suspensions be. The minimum is 10 games. So if they're convicted, but league executives aren't entirely convinced by the prosecution, then they may get the minimum. But if they're buying the prosecution's case, then, like you said, it could be 50, it could be more, and we'll see what happens.
I'm going to add to that. Even if they don't get convicted,
they can still.
There's Article 35 of the league constitution, which empowers the NBA Commissioner Adam Silver to suspend players for any conduct that does not conform to standards of morality or fair play, that does not comply at all times with all federal, state, and local laws, or that is prejudicial or detrimental, to the NBA. That is pretty broad. The appearance of impropriety is impropriety. Getting arrested is enough.
Absolutely, and Adam Silver is very tough when it comes to these sorts of cases. He has in the past issued disciplinary measures that have been a lot harsher than people might have expected, and I think he's been doing a good job keeping things in line in this league.
It's not going to end here. It's not going to end here. I'll tell you that much. I think their saga is going to not end, and I think we're going to have to see what happens. But Ron, thank you for joining us for now. We are